In this demonstration, we will go over an example of the application of SpatialStudio in the mining arena when working with CAD data. SpatialStudio is a dynamic spatial building and analytics tool. SpatialStudio works seamlessly with both 2D and 3D data. Data of almost any format can be brought in and worked with. SpatialStudio is used in both the spatial business intelligence and mining arena, as it is capable and powerful enough to handle both. Now, in this example, I'm going to bring in a CAD data file that was created in MicroStation as a DGN file. In this example, I'm using a DGN file, but we support bringing in many other different formats of CAD files, such as AutoCAD, DWG, or DXF files. To bring in any file into SpatialStudio, you can simply click, drag, and drop the file on. As I've dropped it on, you can see a dialog has come up prompting me whether I want to bring it in flat or by level. If I bring this design file in flat, it will just be brought in as one single layer. If I bring it in by level, it will be brought in as a series of layers created for each level of the data. In this example, I'm just going to bring it in by level. I'm then prompted to choose a projection for the file. This file does not come with any predefined projection, but I can select and allocate one to it, which is what I did here. This projection is the correct projection for this file, which will ensure that it's plotted correctly in space and can be viewed correctly with other data such as Google Maps. Now, when a projection is assigned to any file that's brought in, it will cause that file to be projected on the fly to the scene correctly, regardless of any other projection that the scene itself might have. It will be translated correctly and plotted on the scene. I'll say use selected projection. And my data has now been loaded in the scene, as you can see. Now we can see immediately there's some invalid data in this file, as you can see these two areas of data are very, very far apart. For now, we're just going to zoom into one area we're interested in here. And there we go. Here is our MicroStation design file with its data showing on the scene. And we can see a layer has been added for us as well when we brought it in. I can expand this layer and we can look now at the various sub-layers for each level of this design file. These layers can then be ticked on and off to just view the data that you want to see and isolate specific levels. Now what I did was I brought in this DGN file actually and cleaned it up a bit and did some other things with it so that I could analyze and work with it better. And I will show that to you right now. I'm just going to get rid of this layer as I already brought it in previously. To demonstrate this to you, I'm going to just use one of our presentation tools that is part of SpatialStudio as well, called StoryBoard, which allows you to capture pre-set up screen states. I'll click on the first node here. And there we go, it shows us our first view when we originally brought in this DGN data. Now, in this example I'm showing you here, I actually brought this DGN file as a flat file and not by level. I then applied some of my own theming to the file to analyze it, which I'll show you. There we go. You can see the file has been cleaned up also, so no annotations and other unnecessary data are showing, and I can just see the geometries that I want to work with. And we can see here in the layer control, in this layer, I created a color theme for each level and then ticked off those levels which contain annotations, etc. that I'm not interested in. And then I can just view and analyze the levels that I am interested in by color here that I created for them. And of course, these can also be ticked on and off. Right, now just to demonstrate that we are working in a full 3D world, I will do a rotate of this data here. And we can see the full 3D world that we are working in here and confirm that our data is correctly captured as well. Alright, now we can have more than one view of data as well, so we can see better how it is formed. And I'll show you how that looks now. Here we can see 4 views that I've set up, looking at the data from different angles in 3D space. Now each layer in SpatialStudio comes with an associated data table which has all the attribute data of that layer. For example, I'll show you in this DGN file the data associated with it, and here it is. Data about level, element type, etc. Now what you can do is you can add in some more columns and fields to this data here, adding stored columns and even calculated columns, which is exactly what I did. I'll show you exactly what I did with that. I added in some new fields of my own and did some new theming. And there we go. You can see the data already looks different as I applied a different theme to it based on the new data fields that I added. And I'll show you what that looks like. Let's open the data table. Here it is. We can see I got rid of some columns that I wasn't interested in and added in some new columns of my own, such as this cost breakdown column, which then allowed me to create some groupings and percentages. These are various costs that are associated with each level in this operation here. I can then do some nice analysis on these costs using our theming facilities, which is what I did. As you can see in this layer here, I created a cost analysis theme, giving a color for each of these elements based on the cost associated with them. I can then tick on and off various costs that I do and don't want to see, and even isolate just one that I do want to see. And there we go. These are areas of high cost that I've isolated and can look at and analyze. Alright, now this data grid that I've been showing you here with all the attribute data is very dynamic. You can work with data here, add extra data, and even do some filtering, which I'll show you. Now, if, for example, I only want to see level 25 of my data, I can filter on that and type in 25. And as you can see, as I've typed it in, it's filtered out all those other levels that I'm only seeing level 25 on the scene now. Right. And now this grid is also very dynamic because you can navigate to your data from it. So if I'm interested in looking at a specific element here, I can simply right click and say zoom selected, and as you can see in this other view of mine, it's zoomed to it exactly, that exact element that I'm looking at here, and I can even choose to highlight it, zoom and highlight it, and you can see it's highlighted there for me. And this way you can easily navigate around to data that you want to look at. And there we go, zoomed and highlighted that element for me. I can then clear the filter that I've applied on 25 as well, and then all the other data is put back for me. Right, now there is another way to inspect data in your scene. For now, I'm just going to show one view. There we go. Now if I want to inspect certain elements that I'm looking at here, we have an inspector tool here, which you can bring up, and you can just simply highlight the element, and as I've highlighted it, brings up all the attribute information which you saw in that data grid that's associated with it, and I can easily analyze and work with it from here. And if I've selected a bunch of items, which I did in this case, 214, I can scroll through them and see all the various data associated with those selected elements I just selected. Right, so that is a basic example of some things we can do with CAD data that's brought in and how we can work with these CAD files. Now, another thing that I will also just show is how the data is all correctly georeferenced in space for us. So to show you this, I'm going to bring up some different data that I brought in on something else using my storyboard. Right, here we can see in this case is a different file that I brought in, which is this dip sprite file. And you can see here it has been brought in and it's exactly georeferenced and geolocated in space with our Google Maps background that we can turn on, and we can see exactly how it is placed. This brings the GIS world very nicely into the mining arena, so you can very nicely analyze and work with your data. Then I'll show you one more thing of some data that we brought in. These are some further DGN files. These are two different files, and you can just see how they can be worked with together in the scene here as they're brought in. Now, data in SpatialStudio can all be worked with in this one area, so you can have various 2D, 3D data, Google Maps, all of these things on in this one area, and you can work with them together. Right, and then now lastly, just to show you that any of these files that you bring in and work with, you can of course then save them out as you wish. You have an option to save them to file in a number of different formats, and I'll just show you some formats available. Now we can see in the properties of this DGN file here, we can see the type is a MicroStation DGN file, which is what it is. If I drop down, you can see there's a whole bunch of different files we can bring in, data mine block models, AutoCAD files, etc., etc. Model maker, a whole list of different file formats we're able to bring in and work with, and we can also export to these same file formats as well when saving out these layers. So if I'm done working with this layer, I can choose to save it out in any format that I wish and do what I wish with it after that. Alright, that is all for this demonstration. Thank you very much.